Hello, welcome to the second lecture of Political Science 1200, Introduction to Comparative Politics. In this lecture, we're going to work on defining politics, political science, and comparative politics. So let's start with the question of what is politics? What does it mean to be political? You probably think of politics as something negative. So we'll use the term politics in a phrase like playing politics, meaning that perhaps the president and Congress are trying to take one another down instead of actually solving problems. Or you might hear somebody say that they don't like their job very much because of office politics. We often think of all politics as dirty and Machiavellian. A lot of the times when we use the term politics in our everyday conversations, it tends to be something negative. And when we think of politics the way that it works in our country, we might have very low expectations and very low opinions of how it works. This might resonate with you, something that Mark Twain once said. Congress is full of the smallest minds and the selfishest souls and the cowardliest hearts that God makes. Now, this might be a popular sentiment, and it's not something that we are going to argue with or deny at all, as politics can certainly be nasty stuff. What we are going to suggest, however, is that politics is not inherently so nasty, and that politics is inherently a very important process. Namely, it is the process of making public authoritative decisions. A political scientist named Harold Laswell gave what is perhaps the most famous and prominent definition of political science, and that is simply that politics is about who gets what, when, and how. And to see why politics is such a necessary and vital process, think of it this way. We want schools and roads and protection from foreign foes. And all of this involves people working together to make tough decisions, like where the schools and roads go, and who has to protect us. Politics is the process of making these tough decisions. I like to think of it in terms of pizza because it is obviously the perfect food. On a basic level, Laswell's definition hints that politics is the process of divvying up society's assets, or pizza, to recipients. It's the process by which we determine who gets a slice, what kind of slice, and who doesn't get a slice. But it's even broader than this. It's not just who gets what slice of pizza, but where the pizza comes from in the first place. Who contributes the ingredients and the time in terms of cooking, and how much of the ingredients and time do they contribute? What is the best recipe for the perfect pizza? And yes, in asking this, we're implying, what is the best recipe for a perfect society? Some people are going to prefer one kind of pizza, others are going to prefer a different kind, and this is also true of society. And these are the fundamental problems of politics. Politics is that process of making decisions. But not just any decisions. These decisions are public, meaning that they do not have to do with just one person or family, but with people in groups or communities or societies. Moreover, these decisions are authoritative, meaning that whatever is the result of the public decision-making process, people have to adhere to that decision, or they have to face some sort of coercion or punishment. Now, these public authoritative decisions can concern many different domains or issue areas. They can concern rights, or responsibilities, or wealth, or power. And indeed, the common string in all of this is power. Politics is about the public use of power. We will go much more into this when we discuss the state, but it's important to note here that what we will deal with in this course all has a common thread of power. But defining power is not as straightforward as we might think, and there are at least three different dimensions we can identify. The first dimension of power involves getting a person or a group to do something that it might otherwise not do. So it's making someone do something. If I forced you to make me pizza, or perhaps what's more realistic, if the government forces you to stay in school until a certain age, or once you're out of school and you're hopefully earning a living with a job, the government's going to force you to fork over a percentage of your income in terms of taxes. The second dimension of power involves keeping somebody from doing something they might otherwise do. So we might all want to rob Papa John's for their pizza, but we don't because the law keeps us from doing it, as even delicious pizza is not worth jail time. The third dimension of power is the most complicated one, and it is the ability to shape or to determine individual or group political demands by causing people to think about political issues in ways that are contrary to their actual interests. So this is drawing a distinction between what somebody might objectively see as their interests and what we can convince others are their interests. This is shaping hearts and minds. So I might convince you that you would rather have a healthy salad than pizza because I want to eat all the pizza. Or a politician, anchorman, advertisement, or ideology might convince you to support a political position that is actually against your obvious interests. So, our next item to discuss is political science. And now that we all understand what it means to be political, let's turn to thinking about what science is. Science is a systematic endeavor aimed at creating knowledge. You probably first think of sciences such as chemistry, physics, and biology that seek to analyze and explain phenomena in the natural world. Political science is a social science, which, along with other social sciences like economics, sociology, and anthropology, attempts to systematically understand the social world of mankind. Some derisively call social sciences soft sciences because social science explanations are often less complete and conclusive than those in the natural sciences. This is true, but this is not necessarily an insult, as it's not just that social scientists aren't as clever as natural scientists, but more to do with the fact that the subjects of social sciences are people. And people are really tough to study because unlike many objects of the natural sciences, they lie and they cheat and they pretend and they manipulate. This is all especially true when it comes to political science, where, as we discussed before, we attempt to rigorously and systematically search for answers about how people and societies make public authoritative decisions. Political science in the United States is divided into 4 broad subfields. The first subfield is American politics, which deals with political phenomena here in the States. The second is political theory, which sits at the intersection of political science and philosophy. Political theorists ask the big questions, such as what is an ideal society, or what an ideal democracy might look like. Next is international relations, which is the study of politics between or among nations. These political scientists ask questions about how countries interact with one another, for instance, how one affects another, or when they decide to go to war. Finally, the fourth subfield is comparative politics, and that's what we're all here to talk about. Comparative politics is the study of power and decision-making within and across countries. The political world is extremely diverse. There are numerous kinds of political institutions, ranging broadly from democracies and autocracies and the different kinds of these, to more specific things like the formal makeup and procedural rules of the constitutional court in each country. Geography, history, culture, economics, and religion all vary across countries and all affect their political systems. Comparative politics is the scientific study of the questions raised by this diversity. As you might have guessed from the discipline's name, comparison sits at the heart of comparative politics. While many people who study comparative politics focus on political questions primarily within one country, most will have aspirations to explain more general political phenomena by comparing and contrasting the experiences within their particular case or region to others in an effort to understand why people make the political decisions that they do. I want to take a moment now to consider the differences between comparative politics and international relations because it's somewhat easy to mix these two up. So the primary difference between comparative politics and international relations is that international relations is the study of relationships between or among countries. So it's politics between countries. So between the United States and China, for example. How do the countries treat one another? What determines the political decisions that they make together? While comparative politics studies politics within countries, meaning we study the events within the United States and within China that might lead to these other outcomes. Of course, many questions in the two subfields overlap a lot. And with globalization, international organizations, democratization, and information technology making rapid gains all over the world, the two fields are bleeding into one another more and more. Take, for instance, a classic problem of international relations. That is, how do states make collective decisions at the United Nations, pictured here at the United Nations headquarters in New York? On its face, this seems clearly like an international relations question, but that can only stand if we assume countries are single actors, or in other words, that countries are kind of like people. But obviously, countries are made up of millions of people. And as democracy spreads around the world, these people have more and more to say in what their government does at the United Nations. Therefore, the President of the United States cannot do whatever he wants at the United Nations because American public opinion has to be taken into account at every turn. So, that's our basic overview of politics, political science, and comparative politics. Good luck with the course reading and the quiz.